Hey everyone, today I will be talking about why it's okay to have your gender change after transition. This may be the most controversial topic I've brought up on this channel, but I haven't heard anyone else speak on it, and I think it's important to address. And to clarify, I'm talking about gender identity and gender performance. I'm not wanting to make a philosophical point about what gender is. For a long time, the trans community has focused on sort of a very rigid, fixed transition where you go from one point to another and you're not ever really able to reconsider things, learn more about yourself, or change. We define ourselves in a very rigid construct when it's very natural to have your gender change. And policing gender performance or gender identity only results in a lot of harm. To start off with why it's natural to have your gender change, it's very unrealistic to assume that someone can have a precise articulation of their gender before they're able to at all live close to how they want to, whether that's a desired body or desired form of presentation. When you get closer to living in congruence with your gender, you'll learn a lot more about yourself. You'll learn a lot more about what you like and dislike about your body, how you want to change it. You'll learn a lot more about how you like to present, and you'll learn a lot more about your gender. You also learn a lot more about yourself through social transition, through occupying a different social position and being able to negotiate through the world from that position. It creates a lot of lived experience that makes it tangibly easier to understand what you're comfortable with, what you like and what you don't like, and where you fit in. Many people identify with a non-binary label until they're able to be more comfortable with themselves and their body and feel justified and comfortable occupying the space as a binary gender. Many people also identify with a binary label until they become more comfortable with their bodies and their social position, and they're comfortable diverging from binary gender. There's a lot of reasons and complex motivations that make it hard for someone to entirely articulate their gender. There's a lot of elements of gender that are beyond just dysphoria and biology. When a trans person who experiences dysphoria has that dysphoria alleviated, they'll have a lot clearer image of themselves and all the elements of gender that aren't what makes them unhappy, but who they are and what they're comfortable with. The binary is also quite arbitrary and socially constructed. So even though someone may still be comfortable with the same presentation and the same social role and the same aspects of their body, they might find it more accurate or comfortable to adopt a non-binary label. Finally, gender can be fluid. Not everyone's gender is consistent, and that's perfectly okay. Resistance to accepting those who do change their gender identity or presentation also causes a lot of harm. To start off, most people who detransition for non-survival reasons do so because they are non-binary. Any evidence of you not fitting into the binary when you previously thought you did is used as proof that you're not really trans. And it forces people to not be able to live as the gender they are if it does change, or if they learn more about themselves in the process. It also makes the process of transition incredibly hostile to new trans people. New trans people are expected to know everything about themselves right away, and they risk losing their community if they learn more about themselves or change. Policing consistent gender performance also hurts trans people who are in unsafe environments and aren't able to present as themselves 100% of the time. It plays into transphobia, where trans people are only accepted on a conditional basis that they are consistent in their gender and that they don't change at all and that they perfectly map up with a narrow trans narrative of acceptable transition. It plays into transphobic fears and it agrees with the transphobes that yes, it is not okay for people's gender to change. Policing who is really trans within our communities only makes it unsafe for everyone. No one's able to authentically open up or express themselves 100% how they want to. Fears and doubts in transition are incredibly normal, especially for trans people who don't end up changing their gender. But what policing does is it makes it so that trans people can't confide in others and be comforted when they do have fears or doubts and they're not able to talk them out and they're not really able to address the fears and doubts. It also restricts trans people from experimenting after they've already transitioned. Trans people are kept away from learning about themselves, what they like and what they're comfortable with, because they're forced to predetermine that all before they've transitioned. This also causes a lot of deep issues for the medical system. It makes the medical system entirely inaccessible at points. Things as simple and reversible as like a simple gender marker change are gatekept behind these very rigid systems. In Canada, you're only allowed to change your gender marker if you have this sort of written agreement that you will never change your gender again. Lots of other countries have this system where you can't change your gender marker until you do irreversible procedures, primarily bottom surgery. Many trans people don't want bottom surgery in the first place, but they're forced into these procedures to sort of prove that they're really trans and they won't change their minds later. The medical system is also innavigatable unless you are certain about everything with your transition. Even if you're certain that you want to go on hormones, you may be blocked until you're certain that you know you want everything else. As discussed before, this is impossible for many until they do have the lived experience in a body that is closer to what they desire. Trans folk are often forced to lie to their healthcare providers. They're forced to lie about whether they want bottom surgery or their gender identity or how they like to present. It's a cliche for many that you have to wear a dress to go into the doctor to be taken seriously about wanting to get on hormones. Trans folk are often forced to lie and hide any potential doubts they may have. They're not able to speak about these because they may get blacklisted from healthcare, which is especially hurtful after you've waited like several years to get on hormones or to get in for surgery. This makes it incredibly harmful towards trans people just receiving basic mental health care. For one, they're not able to address these doubts and feelings, not with their community and not with paid medical professionals. And it also means that they're not able to open up their whole experience and everything that's bothering them when they're in therapy. Medical providers aren't able to understand that a patient is having doubts and be able to work with it and encourage learning and growth, or create healthy solutions that aren't blacklisting a client. Trans folk who end up deciding to discontinue HRT or change their minds on procedures are also alienated. Any non-consistency is considered antithetical to transness. So if you're happy living as a trans woman who's not on hormones, then people don't consider you as trans. And you're not generally welcome within communities or able to open up about your unique experience. people who have adverse effects to various aspects of their transition aren't able to open up to their community, and they're not able to open up to the medical system, which kind of narrows them down to forms from detransitioners and people who regret transitioning. But there's no space between being trans and having absolutely no problems with your transition and having to detransition. There's no middle ground that someone's allowed to occupy. Various procedures, such as bottom surgery, are often outright inaccessible to people who are not currently on hormones, despite the fact that you can't be on hormones when you're getting the surgery. And the medical system is overly rigid and sit around these very standardized guidelines that don't have any protocol for what to do when someone is inconsistent in their gender. Inconsistency is proof that someone is not trans, because the criteria dictates that gender dysphoria, which is often equated with transness, is this clearly recognized, persistent symptom since childhood. I hope this video serves to demonstrate that it is okay for people to change in their gender identity or their presentation, that we as a community should support and celebrate those who learn more and articulate their gender instead of ridiculing and alienating these people. And I hope this video helps those who have curiosities, doubts, or end up making changes to their gender identity or presentation after they transition. It's a completely normal process. You're not alone, and any result of this sort of conflict only leads to the better of you actually understanding yourself and learning who you are and what you're most comfortable with. If you enjoyed this video, I would love to have you follow along, and I hope you have a great day, and I will talk to you later.